Hi.
Hello.
I'm Slava and this is Dima, my co-host. I believe we've been somehow working together since about 2015-ish.
Yeah, I think so.
And the first time we met was preparation for TEDx in Dnipro, Ukraine. And then a few other events and presentations. And somehow we ended up recording a podcast together.
Which would not be too surprising given how often we met at different events, given different speeches and so on.
I agree. Back in the day, you were CTO of Rollup, and you were the main person moving apps to the cloud in that organization. And since then, you've changed a number of jobs. And this podcast probably is the only thing that connects 2015 and 2022.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've been CTO of Rollup. Now I'm an engineer at Meta, living in London. And you didn't change jobs that much since then, right? You were at Savvy at that time. You were focusing on bringing the joy of English language to IT specialists in Dnipro and all over Ukraine. And you're still pretty much in the same line of business. It's just you extended beyond English and you try to teach soft skills and bring joy of productive work to people, right? At Savvy.
That is true. Our team has evolved quite a lot since then. And Biweekly was quite an interesting experience as well, because it actually, you can track through our first season of Russian-speaking episodes how I was handling my managerial challenges and what stages we were going through, because some episodes were directly about my issues, and I was just coming to our first season to talk about them, and you helped me a lot there.
Well, I have to say that it worked for me the same, much the same way, because we often discussed like real things and real challenges that we are facing in our mostly professional lives, I would say, and that to me personally that was an immense help to discuss them and talk them over with a smart person that you are.
Well, currently, as a team of hosts, we have 269 episodes of Biweekly Season 1. Some of them were English-speaking, but I believe they were in quite different format. And starting from today, we go from episode 1 of Season 2, which is going to be purely English-speaking, and working on a different way, different method, and different approach.
So, yeah, the different approach would be we will be sitting our backs to the camera and talking past each other, right? Is that what the new approach is?
Yeah, that's the main plan, but I believe we will be still tackling managerial topics. We'll mostly look into four different formats. There would be episodes guided by you, episodes led by me, some discussions, debates, or guest episodes, and the book clubs. And we'll try to sort it out the way it goes, so we'll appreciate any feedback we receive in the process, some things that are working for you, some things that you think could be changed. Because for us, podcasting is like a little community, and we are really grateful to people who were with us during the first season 1, and their feedback shaped the podcast the way it is now and our podcasting experience as well.
That's a great point. You know, like it occurred just now to me that I had this thought earlier this week that when we solicit feedback for some of the work in progress that we've done, we often ask people to tell us how this thing can be improved, like what is bad in it, and what can be done differently, so that it can be better. I would also encourage people to tell us what are the things that you like about what we do, so that we can do more of things that you like and not necessarily highlight the things that are bad, like my jokes. And one other thing I think it would be worth mentioning is that you are a manager and learning expert, like maybe teaching expert, right? Because you teach other people to do things differently and in better ways. So one can expect that the topics that you are going to bring would be relevant to managers and like professionals who work in those areas. Whereas I'm an engineer and also do quite a bit of managerial activities, and that naturally lends the topic that I would bring also to maybe related to engineering or engineering look at the world, and as well as management related stuff.
So most of the episodes will be on the edge between management and engineering, management and learning, but sometimes we also end up in some curious places like philosophy or some other experiences. Sometimes we jump into our personal productivity. So we'll see how it goes. And I believe today we can start with the first episode of season 2.
Yeah, let's try.
All right, so let me give the context. We are currently in Ukraine. We, meaning Sevi. And Ukraine is going through military conflict, war with Russian Federation. During this time, people went from crazy to hectic to concerned and still quite anxious about work. And it's not always easy to come back to some routines, and I believe that in terms of management, one of the crucial elements is planning. If you don't know where you're heading, it's really hard to move on for quite a while. That's why the question is, when do you actually come back to short-term planning, mid-term planning, long-term planning? I believe this is the question that many people are asking themselves now, because they used to plan, let's say, yearly. And currently, I've asked a few of my friends on Facebook and in direct messages about their planning horizon. Right now, it's about 2 weeks, maximum 2 months. And I know just few people who still plan long-term these days in Ukraine. So what I wanted to talk about is firstly some basics about definitions, approaches and methods, and then questions about how we can combine this long-term and short-term planning in different crisis conditions.
Yeah, let's try that. That's a deep topic. Yeah, let's dive into it.
So I've Googled some definitions or terms that we are going to use, and my suggestion is that we define goal as the object of person's ambition or effort, something you desire as a result. Would it make sense to you to define goal like that?
Yes, but not quite. I guess I already told that I'm an engineer. I want things to be more precise. And here, maybe my English is failing me, but the object in this context, does it mean like the object as a kind of a thing?
Like
type,
a thing?
Yeah, type of a...
I believe it's close to objective.
Because I would rather, like, following this definition, I would rather reframe it as the state of things, of state of the world that is person's ambition or something like that. That it's not necessarily that there is something tangible that comes out of something, but rather the world rearranged in a way that's favorable to that person or something like that.
That's getting quite complicated. Let's agree on the desired result after an activity.
Yep. Well, yeah, like kind of. I wanted to agree when you said like the desired result, but then after an activity, I was like, yeah, maybe there are multiple activities, you know.
Desired result.
Desired result.
The goal is a desired
result. Yep. Outcome.
Then there are plans, things that are supposed to bring us there, and that's an intention or a decision about where we are going, what we are going to do, or detailed proposal how to achieve the goal.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yay! We finally agree.
A set of steps to supposedly get us where we want to be, or produce the desired outcome or result.
And the third term, which I find quite important for our conversation today, is planning horizon. I'm not sure whether that's a common English spoken word, but in Russian we do use planning horizon quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it's the length of the time into the future that you account during planning. So whether you're planning for a year, 10 years, 250 years, or something along those lines.
All right. Yep. Makes sense.
All right. So let's probably first focus on different approaches or methods, and I would like to discuss three things. First is the difference between standard SMART goals and OKRs, which is the common business approach, and there are plenty of articles about the differences, pros and cons. But also I'd like to bring in something that you and I have been practicing for quite a while, themes, and see whether they are applicable in terms of business, personal productivity, and what is the core difference between three of those then. Let's start with SMART and OKRs. Have you had a chance to look through an article which I put in our show notes?
I think I did. I mean, I did have a chance.
Then could you share your gist impression, whether it matches your experience with goal setting?
You know that in general, my experience with different ideas might be different from that of other people, because you remember when we were reading books, I often overlooked specific recommendations and tried to get I want to think to get at the core of ideas and kind of borrow them. But I guess that would be more fair to say that my understanding or my interpretation of those ideas, which might not be exactly what the book says. But in general, I think what they say in the article kind of aligns with my view. I think SMART works better for smaller things. That way, being specific, measurable, making sure that the next objectives are attainable, kind of prompts action. But for the long term, maybe not so much, because in the long term, plans often can be frustrated by external circumstances of things going not quite as expected, and then it would weigh down on someone when they think, oh, right, we are failing our plan or something like that.
You know, while I was looking for an article about the contrast, it was striking how many articles were really biased in terms of OKRs. Like OKR is a fresher approach of goal setting. That's why most of the articles were kind of trying to show pros and cons, but the list of pros of OKRs was so much longer than of SMARTs. And I picked this one from Biweekly10.com because it seemed to be balanced, and they kind of show that, yes, these are two methods. You could go for SMART for smaller teams, for individual contributors, for people who go for personal development. For them, SMARTs could work better. And if you need to adapt faster, if you work on collaboration and you would like goals to be more transparent, OKRs can be more helpful because of the nature and the methods that stand behind them. And it kind of matches my experience. I think that OKRs are indeed more adaptive, and you could say that working with OKRs right now, during the war conflict in Ukraine, we kept 3 out of 4 OKRs that we had before. We just changed all the key results there, but the objectives are still the same. Like, we've totally changed the methods of work, but the directions that we picked before, they are still there. They're just pick the different method. That's why OKRs are kind of more flexible in these terms.
Yep, that's exactly what I would say about OKRs. OKRs, the way that the method is structured, it kind of decouples the goals from the method of achieving them. So the objectives are separate from the steps, which are represented by those key results that we want to get along the way towards that objective. And we can keep the objective, but still adapt our method of achieving that as we go along, whereas SMART is more monolithic and baked in, like from the get-go. It's like 0 or 1. It's all or nothing, roughly.
which actually brings us to the third method, the themes. And I believe that you and I have been practicing it since about 2019, when you first recommended Cortex episode to me.
Right.
Cortex is another show by CGP Grey and Mike. Don't remember the last name.
Mike Hurley.
Mm-hmm. And that's the method that they picked. When we tried doing it for quite a while, we had about 8 different episodes with discussing themes and practicing yearly themes. You even gave me this amazing notebook that I keep even these days for my themes tracking. And during one of our events, we named them points, somebody brought up that this method is actually older and it's been named lighthouse planning. The themes is just another variation of it. And I decided to dig it up a bit, and it turned out that lighthouse planning is not really a really discovered thing or something researched quite well. I found trademark the lighthouse method, and I attached the link there. But the more I tried to find some research or explanation of what the method actually is, the fewer valid resources there were. So I believe that themes right now, the way we know about them from Cortex, from their website, from their personal experience, and from what we know, is actually more grounded than this method or the way it was described in terms of lighthouse trademark thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess it would also make sense to give our listeners a brief recap of what the idea behind that is that instead of having a very specific, detailed set of steps with like maybe dates and milestones and outcomes for each of those steps to get somewhere, we instead chose to define this end state, the end goal of our journey, and then as we go along, frequently check that we are moving in the direction of that goal and adjust accordingly. So that way we supposedly are not as frustrated when something goes not exactly as we planned or as we expected, but since we keep our eyes on that lighthouse far out, we can keep moving. And the theory goes, and I guess our practical implementation of that kind of shows that a little goes a long way, and it is in some dimensions more effective to organize at least personal or individual professional life along the goals, because it allows to get further in, let's say, in 1 year than with more specific goals that can be frustrated by external circumstances.
You mentioned that's assumingly less frustrating. What about your personal experience? Have you been frustrated by themes you've been trying these years?
Not necessarily by themes that themselves. I think it, like anything, themes require discipline in a sense that you need to, not to say revisit your themes, but remind yourself of those themes. And like with the notebook that we've got, one of the methods that Mike and CGP Grey propose is that every day you kind of evaluate how you lived that day, and according to that theme, like were you doing what you would have expected yourself to do, following that theme, and make adjustment actions accordingly. And that all requires discipline. And what I found that when my discipline was lacking, this is where the progress started slowing down or dwindling at all, and where the frustration went up. But then I would not say that was a frustration with themes. It was more of frustration with myself for not being disciplined as much. But then it quickly, it was not too bad of a frustration in a sense that you can, all right, so I need to do something different tomorrow. Let's do that. It's not like, oh, I missed those 5 deadlines, or I missed 5 milestones, or I spotted where I veered off my desired course. Right, we do course correction and move forward, which is, at least in my case, is somewhat lighter on psyche.
Are you practicing any themes right now?
Remember what I said about discipline?
I mean, do you still have a theme that you believe should be done, or something that is active?
I had something in the beginning of the year, but then situation changed, as you might expect, and the longer term things and then plans and aspirations faded away quite a lot. So if you ask me now, I would not even remember what the theme was. I'm sure if I check my notebook, I'll be able to.
Wasn't it a year of out, or it was the previous one?
Year of out was the previous one. This is kind of solved now. You know, the dog is like mandatory 2 hours out every day, which is great. I don't remember really my current theme. But I'm not too frustrated about that. I'm now, new thing is kind of brewing inside me, but it's not just quite baked yet.
You know, in my experience, I've tried this thing on multiple time slots. Like I've been working with yearly themes, monthly themes, seasonal themes for 3 months. 3 year, I had a triennial of boldness about these brave ideas. A year of my mind, a year of polishing, a semi-year, like a 6-month period. And a few weeks ago, I've come up with 3 themes. I think this is extensive, but it works. And one of them, the shortest one, is for 3 months. And it's a season or autumn of relief. I'm going to work on feeling more relieved and getting more resilient in terms of coping with stress that we all face right now in Ukraine. Then the yearly one is the year of deceleration. It's like acceleration, but the opposite. So slowing down, taking fewer new projects. Kind of reminds me, I think it was Mike's year of less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not too dissimilar to that.
From one of the Cortex episodes. But the idea is that I think I would like to slow down. But surprisingly, the 5-year theme that I've picked, and there is a word quinquennial, which means 5 years. It's a quinquennial of scaling. And in terms of 5 years, I would like to actually work on scalable projects, something that can go global, something that can make impact on huge amounts of people in terms of value, education, critical thinking, etc. And it's funny that the final objective or the final theme is actually about something global and doing more, but the preparation stage is relieving, chilling, relaxing, slowing down before you can actually get down to business.
Well, that's quite important. It's been a while since we discussed themes, and it's interesting that you shared them. I have so many thoughts about that. So maybe one of the future episodes we should devote to that. And to be honest, like all of them feel super relevant, even to myself. But I also, like, we've been talking so much over the years, and I can totally see how these themes are somewhat a natural milestone on the trajectory you're going through. So I'm quite excited about you working on those themes and sharing your progress with us, or observations, or like whatever it is.
I kind of miss our checkup episodes when we were discussing the stepping stones, the foundations that we put on, some experiments, the outcomes of the themes. So I hope that we can dedicate some time in terms of podcasting for the themes, and hopefully in some, let's say, not the nearest, but foreseeable future, you'll come up with your team as well. So it wouldn't be a one-sided game for us.
Yeah, for sure. That's for sure.
But I wouldn't like to focus just on the themes, but maybe on a little comparison right now. So we have these SMART goals, we have the OKRs, we have themes that are also some sort of goal-setting mechanisms. And in your personal experience, where would you apply each of those in your life, in your projects, in your teams?
Yes.
That's a good answer. Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
I guess that would sound obvious because it is obvious, I guess. So I would use them where appropriate. And
thanks, Cap.
Lighthouse kind of thing, which I guess in my professional life that would be something called like setting vision or something. I would do that as a something that has at least a 1 year out perspective. So we want to go there. Is this the thing we care about? If yes, we said this is a vision and we try to get there, and then organize individual projects and activities around that vision in hope that those are going to bring us closer to that vision. And when we work on a specific, more specific project level, then something like OKRs or SMART come into play. Like with projects on a bigger scale, there I would definitely define like what it is that the project is supposed to deliver in terms of value, without paying too much attention how we are getting there, if that makes sense. But then on even smaller scale, that would be something super specific, like this like API have to have this capability and do X, Y, Z, and let's go do that by the end of next week, something along those lines. So it would be like a progression, right? I'm not sure, you're not a software engineer, but those who are software engineers may remember some time ago it was quite a popular thing on Notion. In many presentations I saw that it was a graph of uncertainty or something. So that the idea was that when we start the project, we have the cone of uncertainty, I think it is. The uncertainty is huge, and therefore it is difficult to plan precisely and estimate things precisely. But as we move forward and we know more about stuff, then we are able to do more precise predictions of qualities of software and time it would take to get it out. So I think it's similar. Similar thing is at play here. Like looking too far out, like many things are ambiguous and uncertain, and like anything can go wrong. So it makes sense not to be super detailed about that, but just set that direction. We are going to where did the Columbus go? East India or something? West India? Mm-hmm. Or no, not West India. But we are going to India that way. So like this is the goal. But then, as we know that things become more specific, we can be more specific, because that can be motivational. I'm sure. Does it make sense?
Let's try landing on an example. So if we take our podcast Biweekly as an example, what's method of goal setting would you pick for such sort of project?
Like all of them, right?
All of them.
Yeah. Isn't that what we did when we discussed the switch from season 1 to season 2? We decided we discussed what we want this thing to be. Like in principle, I changed format a little bit, changed the cadence, switched to English, stick to specific things that went well in the past, like discussing books and stuff. So this was to me that there's something along the lines of lighthouse kind of thingy planning, and it maybe even further thing out of that would be like to make this experience enjoyable for us, so that we can continue doing it. So that's not too much effort. So that's like a lighthouse kind of thing to me. Wouldn't you agree?
I think we right now we approach it more like OKRs. Like there is an objective, but we do have some key results and stepping stones. We even have this little check-to-do list with projects or direction that we would like to improve in terms of video recordings, the voice, and some other things. So it doesn't seem like a theme to me because it's very precise and time-sensitive right now. Like we had quite a deadline here. It was possible to fail season 1 preparation.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. So that when to me there was this level of like thinking about the future, like in general, how we want this thing to be, but then it turned into more like very specific plans of what we wanted to do, both in mid-termish and in short term, right? We had in our notes, we had this to-do items, which some of which are very, very specific, like for you to transport your mic stand from one location to a different location. That's a smart goal, right? And it has...
That's a task. Let's be precise here. It is a plan. It's not a goal. Plan, definition, plan is an intention or decision or detailed proposal of achieving something. So in this case, we know what we would like to do, episode 1, and the way we get there is planning. Let me give you another example just to confuse you even more.
Okay.
Let's say Sevi has been working on an AT project. It's an assessment system. There are 2 technical guys there. There's a manager and some methodologists that work on this assessment system. And we invite you as a consultant or advisor here to help us build a roadmap for the future development, maybe make some major changes or improvements in terms of the architecture, etc. Would you suggest that at this stage, in a team of 4 people with an MVP working right now and starting bringing revenue to our team, we would prefer one or the other method of goal setting? Or you would recommend using one or the other as an advisor?
Yeah, advice is what I have to offer here. Like I said, I think it would be valuable to do planning on multiple levels. Like on the theme, like the vision or mission statement for the product would play that role, so that you can know roughly if you are moving in the right direction with the product. That is more. That would be important for continued evolution of the product. Whereas then, after that thing is done and nailed, then OKR would, I think, do wonders to focus team on specific steps to get to a thing. But at the same time, the mission vision thing would, I think, can at times it may not come to that, but it may play an important role of kind of grounding what we do in a sense that we can indulge ourselves in bike shedding exercises where we obsess over little tiny detail that doesn't really matter much, if at all, instead of doing something that brings us closer to that vision. So it depends on the team, their discipline and stuff and stuff like that. But I think those 2 things are important. But then so that there would be like the mission thing, the lighthouse thing would be the company level kind of a setup. Then OKRs can be company to team level, but then we can go as far as smart on the team to individual level. Again, depending on the level of team members, some of them could benefit from things that are defined more specifically when they understand what they need to do today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and how what they're doing contributes to those hierarchy of goals and missions and aspirations.
Well, that's basically what we do, but the thing that you described is goal setting in terms of the entire organization. So let's say top managers or founders come together to define the vision. Mm-hmm. They talk to the main stakeholders in the team and decide where they'd like to go. Then we work on OKRs, so we define those objectives and key results there. And then at the individual level, most people have their individual development plans where they have SMART goals on what they would like to achieve as professionals and how they would like to improve, etc. So most of the things do work quite well. My question is more about a specific project and whether what are the indicators for you that the system of goal setting is not appropriate to the current state of the project. Let's say people are using SMART when they actually should start thinking about vision a bit more. Or they're working with OKRs when nothing is defined yet and there are no key results at all. And there is no need for that because it's just the R&D stage and there is no certainty at all here. So no key results could be defined at all.
That is complex and interesting question. I think what first thing that comes to mind, and that's my experience, that's mostly what I would think of or what I would try to do. Remember we discussed, was it in around untools and stuff like that, the Minto pyramid kind of thing? So where the idea is that everything follows from something else, like we have a top level thing, maybe goal, vision, whatever, then it is supported by more specific stuff, but then the idea is that all of the things at the next level below have to be mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, so they fully describe or fully provide full set of details on the next level for the item above them and so on and so forth. So what I will be on lookout at different stages of the project is whether the mental Minto pyramid describing the project kind of makes sense. So it was not once that I've seen situations where people have not defined where they're going, like what they want to achieve in the end, but they already decide on specific tools that they are going to use. To me, that kind of breaks this pyramid. We don't have the top, but we are 3 levels down from where we would be, and this discussion or decisions about tools, we don't have anything to connect them to. There is no way to evaluate whether we are moving in the right direction or not. So if those things are present, then it's fine. We can then navigate between the two and change things as necessary. But I would be very wary of situation where we get into more detailed things before we figured out more high level stuff around the project.
It might be off topic, but as I was listening to you, it kind of reminded me the approach that some Ukrainian government institutions are dealing with crisis right now. I can say that some things are kind of built around the strategy. So there is an idea. For example, our military operations, they do have the overall strategy. There are methods, there are operations, there are different variables that are pretty much aligned the way I see them right now. I know it's really hard to judge from the way we can see right now from the news or some things, but when I look at some, let's say, ministries and the way that they perform, they try to organize volunteering. A few days ago, they issued a law that people who supply personal protection gear should get some extra permissions or extra applications or extra something. And it's really hard to understand what is the final goal, like how they would like to rearrange volunteering at the end and why these steps are taken. So they might have this strategy, but it's very poorly communicated. And I think that communication is one of important aspects in terms of planning here.
Yep, absolutely.
When it comes to the government, especially in crisis, I can see that our military institutions do have a longer-term strategy. They realize that this war might take a while. But when I look at businesses, I'm not sure that people have these contingency plans and ideas how they would like to develop if the situation keeps escalating or if the situation remains at this level of uncertainty for quite a while. Which brings us to the question, how far do you think it's relevant to plan these days? Like if you run a team like me of 50 people and you would like to start setting OKRs. Most people that I talk to, they stick to idea of 2-3 months because it's like something you can still kind of project or assume that what's going to happen. But at the same time, you're flexible here. What is your position or idea about that?
I think it kind of makes sense what you described, that in situation of greater uncertainty you tend to plan for shorter periods of time. I guess what I would like to bring to the picture here is the balance between the level of detail on the plan against the level of uncertainty. I think the higher uncertainty is, then the more difficult it is to plan further ahead. But I would not say that we should not plan further ahead at all. We might... Just
to clarify, do you have any difference, or do you mean any difference between plan ahead and set goals? Is it the same or it's different? Like when you set those OKRs and you create plans how to achieve those key results? Or it's part of the same process and you don't really decompose it?
To me, that probably would be part of the same process. And this is where you would see that I'm not too, maybe not too fluent and at the precise prescriptions of the methodology and willing to bend it to my will. I would say that in situations of uncertainty, I think one additional role that the plan can play is that it helps to highlight situations when we need to change the plan. You know what I'm trying to say. So if we wanted to go somewhere, we started going there, but we are not getting there, that the reality mismatches our plan, that fact that reality mismatches our plan is a signal to maybe stop for a while and think about what's going on and where we should be going. Whereas if we didn't have that plan, didn't have those goals and didn't try to achieve them, we would be like going with the flow, which might not be the best way of navigating the uncertainty.
No, on one hand, it seems totally reasonable. So I cannot disagree with you. On the other hand, if we roll back to my example of themes, it would be impossible to pick a year of deceleration or fall of relief if I didn't know the final objective or the longer term theme. So for me, planning themes started with 5 years. And then I started thinking, what do you need to get there in terms of a year or in terms of next 3 months, etc. How did I know? Because if I start from 3 months, I can't even let myself go through autumn of relief because, oh my God, there is so much happening. How can you rest now? In short-term perspective, if you don't look into the future, you basically don't even understand why you need this relief. It's like vacation, yeah? If you are not burnt out yet, you don't plan a vacation in advance, but it's too late to plan a vacation after you've burnt out. So the idea here is that if you know that, all right, I should be working here for 3 years, so I do need episodes of rest in the process. It's like planning a marathon. When you schedule both training, intensive training, and rest. In terms of business, I realized that when I reevaluate or reflect on my managerial style, even before the war, I felt a bit hectic and stressed out. So in order to do something scalable, I should chill first and clear my mind and be able to focus and think systematically. And to do that, I should rest right now and get relieved from things that concern and worry me right now. So like it kind of, without seeing the 5-year perspective, it's really hard to plan a year perspective, and it's almost impossible to choose the first steps accordingly to what has to be done at the end, if it makes sense.
It does. It does make sense, certainly. However, I think there are maybe more dimensions to that. I think if I heard you correctly, you were ever so slightly on the more formal side of the planning and goal setting process, right? So that when what you're kind of saying that you cannot say you cannot set a 3-month goal unless you understand where you want to be in 1 year. So because the 3-month thing has to be connected or somehow follow from that longer term perspective and aspiration. Is that right?
Well, basically that is true. Let's say if I would like my company to relocate to the United States, doing it with yearly planning horizon is quite impossible, because just the documentation itself will take much longer, just preparation and research and things. But if I have a 10-year perspective and I would like to move my company to the United States, let's say by 2026, then I can schedule multiple things. And today I can actually start making calls, even in this crisis, even during the mess that we are going through, to I don't have a specific plan, it's like goal, basically, like a theme for me.
Right.
And that's why I think that when people think about longer term planning, they kind of, let's say, expect that there should be a plan attached to it, that you should have not just the goal, but also a plan, and your year should also be a plan, and then your 3 months should be a plan, and it should be a plan inside of a plan, inside of a bigger plan. But I didn't actually spend any time thinking about the scaling itself or defining it in details or thinking it was just a direction. Or the way you say mission, or vision.
Yeah, mission.
Keep confusing your terms here.
That's lighthouse, theme, mission, vision, aspiration.
But for me, this thing goes back to one of the hackathons that I was helping to host in Dnipro. It was the space hackathon hosted by Archer, and one of the guest speakers there was Richard Tomlinson. The guy was working for NASA for quite a while. He was pitching the budget of NASA, and now he went to private sector, and his organization, Deep Space Industries, has the planning horizon of 78 years. So most of the things that they consider launching will be launched after Rick actually dies. So I think that this is something related to this like lifetime goal or even sort of a dream or vision thing. But I believe that right now he still, knowing this planning horizon, he can make calls, decisions, and set the priorities in a smarter way.
That's an interesting thing. You know how bad I am with counting things, but I think I have two points I wanted to bring to the table. The first one would be with this planning horizon and things. I think, and I guess my experience tells me that there can be two types of situations. One can be where the timing is the primary thing, like the source of everything. This is when you come to an interview and they tell you like, where do you want to be in 5 years? all right. So like they said, you set this horizon and then build everything else around that. Or it can be like quite the opposite. And I think the case with Deep Space Industries, and also in your example with relocating company to a whole different country, it would be like the situation would be upside down. You set a goal or a vision, and then you work out the timelines and horizons to be able to achieve that thing. And in different, once again, in different situations, it makes sense to think differently about stuff. So of course, if I want to launch a mission to Mars, I have to. That's the to me that would be the primary thing. And then we work out the timelines. We need to be able to. Maybe on a milestone to that, we need to be able to send a mission to the moon or to orbit the moon and get back and stuff like that. And then all right, so this would realistically or optimistically take us 3 years. And the mission for Mars, we can plan in 7 years. And then this gives us the horizon. Whereas in some other cases, it can be, I'm a beginner athlete, right? And I know that I have only as much of a productive time in my life to be an like world-class athlete. So I have to plan things out. Like the timing there plays a lot more important role rather than a specific milestone. The Olympic Games happen every 4 years, so that you have to plan around the timing rather than around specific goals. So I think we need to keep this thing in mind. And one more thing was about, again, those cascading plans. I think what I was getting at with my formal side or less formal side of things, there can be situations where we can work out what needs to be done in the short term, even if we did not give our longer term plans full rigorous thinking. We kind of in the back of our minds, we kind of worked things out, and we know that the next step might be like something like this. If I want to be like more healthier, it would make sense for me to go into like regular sport activities. But before I decide on which kind of sport to go into like really seriously, it would make sense for me to lose a bit of weight and to improve the general fitness, right? I can do that no matter the specific of the longer term goal. So I can set myself a goal to lose like 10 kilos in 3 months. I'm not sure if it's attainable or feasible, but I can set that. It would make sense, even though I don't have super specific, super detailed plans for the bigger thing that would follow that. That makes sense.
It does. Let's try to switch into learning, because we kind of mentioned that many topics will be ending specifically there. I have an assumption that it's possible to learn these visions, missions, longer-term planning, etc. in, let's say, experimental environment. Like you can read books with futuristic forecasts, you can read reports of think tanks, you can look at longer strategies of bigger companies and kind of talk to people who are thinking long-termish, like Rick Tomlinson, for instance. And while communicating with people like that, you kind of borrow some of the features of their mindset. What I've noticed that during the wartime, our planning just shrunk so much. I remember the first day of the invasion, I was thinking about hours, like what do I do if something changes in the next 3 hours? It was impossible to think longer. Then, like the next day, I started thinking about my family, more about my friends, about my team, and like my responsibility kind of pushed my planning horizon further. Then I started thinking, all right, what happens like in a few months? What about the financial security of my team? Like what are they going to eat in a few months from now? What are our reserves, etc.? So it kind of, again, extended my planning horizon to months. And I can definitely see that many people in terms of management, both business and government sector, they have this sort of limitation of their vision until the victory. Like, we should get to the victory and that's pretty much it. When we win, we will build a new strategy. But the point is that it doesn't actually work like that. If, let's say, our president has the strategy just till the victory, then we don't have a strategy right now how to support economics for the future development, how to develop the army for the future defense, etc. And I believe that at certain level, you just have to have this longer planning thing, even when things go wrong, even when everything gets super unpredictable and hectic. If your responsibility level is stronger, you just can't really afford having people with shorter planning horizon on responsible positions like ministers, let's say, or CEOs of bigger companies. As a designer, you can definitely shorten your planning horizon to weeks and feel absolutely fine. But if you are head of design in an agency that works with 200 people, I think it's a huge risk for your colleagues, for yourself, for the business, for the country you work in, if you have this limitation of, I can't really think longer than 3 months. And the question is, how to learn this longer term planning in crisis? Because in peaceful times, it's kind of defined. But when you're stressed out and you just have this internal barrier, like, I can't, why would I plan? Because everything will go different way anyway. Why should I spend time thinking about this? Or I can't, like, physically barrier, like, I can't visualize anything that happens in a year. That's a question that I've been thinking about for 3 weeks now, and I still don't have an answer.
Yeah, that's tough. I wouldn't even pretend I have an answer to a question how to learn that. But once again, I will try to offer some ideas that might be at play here. When things unfold very rapidly, like invasion of your country begins, it is only natural that the time kind of shrinks. A lot of things happen in a very short period of absolute time, and that coping with that, responding to that, requires a lot of kind of energy. And it only makes sense to me that in absolute terms, the planning horizon kind of shrinks. But if you think about this in terms of important events that you have to go through on the way to something, it may not be too different from longer term planning in more peaceful times. If you have six important events happening in 6 months, it's about the same amount of planning as six important events happening in 6 hours, right? That's like, you have to plan for 6 kind of potential pivots in what you're doing. It's just in absolute time, it's the horizon in absolute time is different, but conceptually,
basically you're referring something like chess, yeah, like how many steps forward you can see, but the steps could be taken in minutes, in hours, in months, in weeks.
So that's why I would not. I would consider, not necessarily consider the planning in times of crisis to be like short-sighted or something. It's just things get compressed because a lot of stuff is happening at the same time. Yet at the same time, I think I agree. I totally agree with you that it is important, especially for like teams and companies, to have someone to think about the future. Like no matter what, almost think about what's going to happen beyond the current events. And I'm not sure how to learn that, but I guess what would make sense is for that someone to find a mental space to be able to do that. Like, you can imagine on a ship, right? The captain rarely does anything useful for the ship in terms of like if there is a bridge or that there is a storm coming and the sails need to be put down, captain never does that. He just, his job is to stand up there at the bridge and think about the future, think about things that are going to happen next. And what allows, like one of the things that allows him to do that is that he can rely on other people to figure out the immediate stuff. He would not be commanding like this sailor to go up that mast to deal with that sail. That's not his kind of purview at the moment. There would be people responsible for that so that he can have this mental space and mental capacity to think about longer term stuff. So I think...
So rephrasing from the metaphor, if there is an arranged crisis management mechanism, people responsible for dealing with shorter term events, then a dedicated person has this mind space to think about.
They can have, at least that would be a prerequisite for them to be able to do longer term thinking. And then comes to learning to be at peace with things being hectic, super uncertain, and then like, calculate those steps in chess. I'm not sure how to... What's the best way, or what is even if a way of learning that, but I guess it will make sense to first create conditions for when that can happen, because without that it might be difficult to imagine something like that ever taking place.
Cool. That's something to consider. And as far as I know, our long-term plan also kind of failed, and we have time restriction right now in terms of the episode recording, so I have one final question for you.
Sure.
How would you draw the difference between a dream and a lifetime goal, or the really long perspective, like say dreams versus goals in a long perspective?
I think maybe they may not be too different, but the distinction I would draw between those is that goal is something that a person has more agency over, whereas dream may be something where the person has a lot less agency. Like I can dream of the world being a peaceful, super peaceful place, but that's a dream. I don't really have much agency over making that come true, whereas something else I can have a lot more agency, and therefore I would call that more of a goal.
So in this regard, Elon Musk's vision of people colonizing Mars is more of a goal rather than a dream.
I think it also depends on the person. For someone that may sound like a dream, he's like a daydreaming, like what's that nonsense? But for him, internally, mentally, it can be that he feels, and probably he does feel like he has capacity to achieve that. So for him, that can be a goal.
You know, if we take this smart definition about specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, etc., I think dreams don't actually have to be achievable. You can dream about things that are unachievable. For instance, in my case, I dream about human species or society or population with developed critical thinking skills. I think it's totally impossible given the trends and tendencies that we live in right now. And it's definitely not my agency. Like I don't have much influence on the entire humankind, but I do have a dream. And at this optimistic note, I think we can round up this first episode.
All right, sounds good. Then see you in a couple of weeks. So you take it easy.
Yeah, and I think we could adopt an old tradition from season 1 and finish our episode with good weeks this time.
Good weeks. Take care.